Let's get back to the World Bank. Last week released its latest global food security report. That report outlined the state of the global food and agriculture system, as well as the trend of inflation on the back of higher food prices. Here in Nigeria, higher food prices is hardly a breaking news any longer, as the country's food security is threatened across several fronts. So, with our new administration expected in place in about 60 days from now, what should be the new direction for the country? Joining me here in the studios for this two-part conversation is an Agric professional and technocrat, as well as a food security expert, African farmer Mogaji. It's Friday evening, and we thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
But the second time in the year, I guess? First time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one. So, that's a new year for you. So, here you are close to the time we're having a new administration. But first, give me a summary of Nigeria's state of agriculture over the past 8 years under the Buhari's administration.
Well,
in summary.
In summary.
Okay. Don't speak about how the whole 8 years, but it's 8 years. What's the summary?
In summary, we had the administration engage more private sector. We had the administration build more hope. We had quite a lot of funding come into the sector. We did not have the outputs intended. But ultimately, they put some structures on ground that the new administration can develop on. But in terms of price of food, went all through the 8 years. It did not come down at all. It wasn't that interesting.
Wasn't that interesting? So when you say money comes in, when you say there's a fund, is it because we budgeted more into agriculture, or because the private sector brought money in? Was it coming from development partners? Where's it coming from? Is it the Fadama project? Is it the FDB? Where's the money coming from?
So we didn't budget more for it. We had funds coming from CBN, which is outside budget from ministry.
Okay.
And we had quite a lot of private sector bringing money.
So how come that all of this money failed to impact food prices, food price inflation?
One, we had wrong diagnosis of the Nigeria's challenge. And one of the wrong diagnoses is that we only plan for Nigeria, we do not plan for West Africa. And all West Africa come to Nigeria to mop up grains on a daily basis.
And I've heard this from so many people.
Yeah.
And I'm asking, why is that so?
Yes, because they have a need. And we need to end Forex, but we do
So
not.
we sell our food products to Cameroon, Chad, Niger, Togo, Burkina Faso, Mali, Senegal.
Yeah.
So we sell and we collect cash.
Unstructured market.
Unstructured?
Yes.
I don't know. Is that official? What is unstructured?
Unstructured means they just walk in, buy it, move it across the border.
Through the borders?
Yes, so it's they buy in Naira, not that money exchange banks.
It doesn't go through the financial system?
It doesn't go through the financial system.
So it's not captured by the central bank?
It's not captured by the central bank.
No, the Ministry of Finance?
Yeah, they bring the bags, the sacks
of money in cash?
In cash.
Naira by the
Naira.
Into Nigeria.
So
market,
they bring the
CFA from
CFA, change it in Nigeria, buy and move out. So every time we don't plan West Africa's food security, our food security is always challenged.
But charity, they say, begins at home. Why is it that charity does not begin at home here?
So the thing is, they are not actually budgeting and planning to feed West Africa.
Why should we feed West Africa? 200 million of us.
Yes.
I haven't had dinner yet, my friend.
So until we begin to budget and feed West Africa, we will not have the excess to take care of us and them. So if we need maybe 1 million metric tons to feed Nigeria, and we budget
of maize,
and we plan to produce like 3 million, then West Africa will be taken care of. We would still have excess. The private sector will play in. But until we have that focus to say we want to feed West Africa, up until then, we won't be able to feed Nigeria.
So the food that should be coming to Lagos, whatever, heading out through the border posts.
Well, so we also have quite a lot of wastage also,
okay,
especially for non-grains. And that in itself is a challenge that we're not capturing, we're not adding value to it. And successive governments have failed. There's no two words about it, because in the last 20-something years, we've not been able to add value successfully to all our perishables. across board.
Tomato,
pepper, watermelon,
vegetable.
peppers, watermelon juice is still imported into the country. When it's
Mangoes, whatever.
Mangoes, everything. We've not been able to add value to that across successful administration. So every year, tomato rots away in February, and since democracy is still the same.
So do we have a Ministry of Farming or Ministry of Agriculture? I'm trying to understand. Because agriculture, to me, as from an economic, financial person, goes beyond farming.
Yes.
So technically, we've just been doing farming, not much of agriculture.
Technically, we've not even been doing farming. You see, I've said it over and over, all interventions from government is always targeted at subsistence farming.
Hand to mouth.
Hand to mouth. They've not improved the equipment that the farmers use. In the north, it is still cattle. It is mostly cattle, and so we've not improved the input and implements that the farmers use across board. Until we improve that, to take away the drudgery from it, we've not started farming. We've been doing subsistence farming.
So what do we need there? Light manufacturing.
We need, beyond light manufacturing, we need light mechanization.
Okay, well, that's the right phrase.
Light mechanization.
Yes.
That is not the big tractors that governments bring in. They are the small tractors.
We're still frying gari the same old way I did when I grew up on the farm.
Yeah.
50 odd plus years ago.
Yes.
Why we still don't have the machines to provide fufu and make it much better, cleaner, healthier? Why is it difficult for us to do those very simple machines?
Because we can do them. In fact, there are so many institutions that have them. We've not just had the long-term thinking. The long-term approach is what is missing. And most importantly, we always have, in quotes, experts with certificates without field knowledge. So they come in, year out, administration to administration, postulating theories that don't work. So at the end of the day, you don't get the intended results.
I don't want us to have this conversation again in the next 4 years to 8 years. So we're going to get into new administration. Well, you just hope so. I don't want us to have it, because how real is the threat? You look at the World Bank latest report for the month of March about the state of the global food insecurity and how food prices is a major component of inflation all over the world. So it's not just because you're in Africa. But again, we've got a whole lot more to deal with. Climate change, flooding, what have you. So if we haven't really seen the impact of all the billions of naira that we poured into agriculture over the last 8 years of the current administration, then what needs to change?
First and foremost, we need to decentralize agriculture. Agriculture needs to be we need to have a regional approach to agriculture. We need to have what used to work. They say you don't discard a winning team. When agriculture was working in Nigeria, it was southwest, southeast, south-south, northwest. It was purely regional.
Top to bottom or bottom up?
Bottom up. The focus was bottom up. Over the years, we now moved top bottom, which is Abuja decides and everybody follows. The state also, the state capital decides in every state and force it down the throat of everybody, as against engaging the rural farmers and having a conversation with them, look at how to improve infrastructure.
The private sector investors.
Private sector investors, we're not even engaging the private sector investors as we should. And when we bring out policies and the private sector rushes in, we find out that the policy, one, is not well thought through.
Well, it's crafted in Abuja, by the way. But that's a seat of government. So you can't take that away.
No, it should be from bottom up.
How will it work? Is it because, so we're going to need to get everybody back to farm? We're back to OFN, right? 1979.
Not necessarily. We don't need to get everybody back to farm. We need to get more into the processing value chain. When you see interventions, even from private sector, you don't see the value chain. You don't see any project that talks about, we're going to support or create a system or a structure for transporters. You don't hear transporters in the value chain.
Of agriculture.
Of agriculture, when they are funding, when government is talking about agriculture. And even if you have a bumper harvest and you don't have a means to move it, which has been a challenge for about 30 years, forever.
So we've had, and we have folks in Nigeria who are we are very good in human transport logistics.
Yes.
The Kennedy Choko and the rest of them. We move a whole lot of things. We move cattle. Why is it difficult to move perishables? So we got to move watermelon from Kano, whatever, Jigawa to Lagos by road.
So what I've seen so far is the people who have been doing it in the last 30, 40 years, that it's a generational business, they don't bring them on the table because they don't have PhDs, masters, and co. Many of them are not schooled, but they are experts. You don't find them on the table when they are trying to design things because they think their educational knowledge is a bit low. But they are the ones doing the business. So you can't just knock them off. For logistics, for production, for everything.
So in terms of transportation, we don't just need trucks. Is that what you're telling me?
We don't just need trucks, but we can also still make do with what we have. We need refrigerated trucks for the tomatoes. But
because now the one that the tomato, the onions will get spoiled because of the heat, the weather.
So mostly, which is one of the major challenges we are having, is we move tomatoes, peppers, almost everything from the north to the south. Now, take for instance the poultry sector.
Yes.
Poultry sector concentrates around Oyo and Ogun State, but all the maize come from the north. From Gombe to Lagos, the big trailer now is about 1.1 million cost on transport. So if you grow maize in Ogun and Oyo, which have large land mass,
yes,
it means that you will get it, maybe save 700,000. But we're not empowering other states vis-a-vis various sectors, comparative advantage. That has not been on the table. Until we begin to bring that on the table, we won't get things done. Then we've not had also the right ministers.
Of agriculture.
Minister of Agriculture and special advisors. Most of the special advisors today don't have field experience, commercial field experience, and they're advising most of the governors, the president. So at the end of the day, it's mostly research. We value certificates in Nigeria. And so it's a certificate that puts them on the seat. And many a times we've engaged many of them, but guess what? It doesn't work at the end of the day because they bring something that worked in maybe India, forgetting that Nigeria is peculiar. And that's what happens. So they come around saying, oh, it worked in Ghana, it worked in this, but in Nigeria, it needs to be adapted here.
So you talk about the structure. I'm going to put you a little bit on that. So where do we need to begin to think through policies and actions that will give us food sustainability? Because the new president, we need food. You talk about petrol, whatever, but again, you need food in the stomach. The number one tank is the one that I carry around with me every time, not the one in the car parked outside. So how do we get that down? How do we get the right Minister of Agriculture? How do we get it down to the state government level? So not just instead of building bridges and fanciful things, because we're talking about 200 million people, majority of whom are women, youth, and children.
Mm-hmm. See, first and first is we have to understand.
Oh, by the way, the president-elect was talking about cassava and all that. So.
Yeah. So we need to focus on our comparative advantage. It is something we don't focus on. Cassava, maize, yam, sweet potatoes, bananas. These are our core comparative advantage. We grow them, we just need to improve knowledge. But if you see almost all interventions, is focused on rice, a lot of talk around cassava, but not working with the system and the structure.
We've been on cassava for so long.
When
Obasanjo's administration was about cassava bread.
So we talk
now the president-elect, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu was also talking about cassava again and maize.
We hope now that they will work bottom up, because president-elect is a grassroots rural man, as far as his conversations are. So if we take it from grassroots up, things will work. But most times you just say, go and plant cassava without processors, without reducing cost of production. So at the end of the day, when you produce cassava in Nigeria, before uprooting it, it is higher than the price of cassava chips in the international market.
How do we run a new focused, new direction Ministry of Agriculture? Tell me, do you have any idea?
One, it should have a bird view, helicopter view. The Ministry of Agriculture should not be involved in all this fertilizer and all those things. Allow the states to sort it out. They generate revenue. So the Ministry of Agriculture should do what the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, does, creating markets, bilateral relations, and not the operations. What we have now is the Ministry of Agriculture getting involved in everything, and so the states hide under them instead of allowing the states to move freely. You don't have any business with fertilizer contracts. Let the states get it for their farmers. You know, they canvassed for their votes, they got their votes, so let them provide for them. The Ministry of Agriculture needs to be engaging diplomats, different countries to create markets. Markets, that's what USDA does for the United States government. They create markets. The more markets they can create, when they go to war to either to support a country, is strictly about agriculture, not about fuel, because they are always creating a market for their farmers.
American farmers.
For American farmers, they need to get into war zones to support them, so the free flow of food comes in there. It's always a trade.
So now that we've got so many neighbors, and they say, well, love your neighbor, as the saying goes. So this is love your neighbors. So we love our neighbors in West Africa. But then, do you think we need to make it a national economic policy, therefore, in terms of, instead of just them coming to buy, how do we support them? What do we do?
So basically, we need to
extend our frontiers.
We need to open up a structure to say, okay, Niger, Chad, they want white beans, and we produce so much. Just like India, Russia-Ukraine war.
Yes.
India said we're not exporting, no private sector is allowed to export again. Everybody must come through government. So before we can do that, we need to encourage the state governments to have silos. The state governments don't have silos, so everything goes to waste. So government needs to support, the state governments to
and
local governments to create those silos so that they can influence things. Without that, and a crucial conversation we don't have, we need to bring religion into agriculture.
Pray for the rain or
no.
What?
So during politics, we leverage heavily on religion. We work on religion, we work on ethnicity. So right now, we need to bring that into agriculture to say, as farmers, when there's no rain, if you didn't do insurance, we're all praying together. And even if you did insurance and there's herdsmen issue, we all pray together. Everything is prayer. And in Nigeria, we listen to our spiritual leaders more than the political leaders. And so if we work together, then we'll be able to secure the food. Ethnically, we work together. We need to bring the structure that, our political system is worked on or is built on into agriculture.
I thought we're having an economic and business conversation. Now you're talking about religion, my friend.
So the thing is, grassroots, that's how it works.
Yes.
So any policy that comes in that does not bring that into play, it will not work. If you go to Gombe, which is about 40% Christians, on Friday, it's the Christians, when you go for meetings, you won't know it's the Christians telling you there's Jumat. And when you ask them, you're not going to pray, so I'm a Christian. They care about the brothers. That's how it is. So until we bring religion, ethnicity, and let's work together, trade together. When Nigeria was working, we were trading together. Religion was not important because we were trading together. If you look at the food you ate today, you didn't ask who produced it. Outside Igbo, Yoruba, it didn't matter.
We're going to continue this conversation before May the 31st. So we're going to keep setting agenda for the I only want to find out who's going to be the new Minister of Agriculture at the federal level and the parastatals under it. We need to restructure things. But for coming here for the first time in the new year, thank you so much. It comes in after the elections. It's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for those instances. Enjoy your weekend. Africa farmer Mogaji, food security expert and a real-time farmer, by the way, on the ground.